Humor, hope, kindness, judgment, forgiveness.
Judgment and forgiveness, my goodness, both ends of the spectrum.
Are you writing a book?
I was trying to be honest, but I never do well in those things. Because then by the time you're asking the same question the fourth time, maybe I don't feel that way.
Oh my goodness, Marty, we're talking about an inventory, a character strength inventory, and part of building positive psychology and a positive growth mindset. I have people take what they call the VIA character strength inventory, and then work and try to incorporate their top 5 character strengths into their daily lives.
Nice.
And it actually builds the road to mental wellness.
So how do you identify your top 5 character strengths?
You go on a website called VIA.
There's a test.
Character.
Oh, okay.
Yep. It's almost like an MMPI light.
Yeah. Does it tell you your flaws also?
Well, it tells you your bottom. There's 24 character strengths, and it tells you all of them, and they rank in order.
Okay. I'll have to try that.
I need to practice a little humility.
Humility? Well, Tony? No. Tony Fresh?
Well, it's fun because I figure, doing this, people go online all the time and they want to see like what color potato they would be on a Tuesday. So why not do some kind of insightful stuff too?
Yeah, it sounds like fun. All right, you guys ready to do this?
Yep.
Let's do it.
Okay. All right, Lead Heads. We are back with another episode of the Talking Lead podcast. Fresh off our trip from Rhode Island for the FLIOA 2021 National Convention. That's the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, which we've attended for the past, I think, 4 conventions. Talking Lead has been there. And we greatly appreciate the opportunity to bring this information to you, Lead Heads, that we discover there, the vendors that they have set up, and, of course, the personalities. And this year, we had another sponsor, and that was with the guys and gals from FEDS, which is the Federal Employee Defense Services. And we've got Tony Vernetti joining us to kick off these lines of interviews. And then we've also got another guest I'm going to interview. But Tony, welcome in.
Thanks. Good to be here. How are you doing today?
Doing really good. Tony's the president and CEO of FEDS. And we did a great interview with he and Brenda Wilson on what all it is that they do. But just high level before we get into that, Tony, talk about what FEDS, why they exist.
Sure. So, again, I am Tony Vernetti, the president and founder of FEDS Protection. And we at FEDS provide professional liability insurance to federal employees and contractors. And one specific area that we focus on and have for years are federal law enforcement officers. So naturally, FLIOA, which, as most of your listeners should know, stands for the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, is a group that's near and dear to our heart. They've endorsed us from the inception. I myself am an attorney. Nobody should hold that against me. But I worked for a federal law enforcement agency for many years, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. So we really provide liability insurance that's specific to the law enforcement community. We understand their risk, their exposures, and we're really kind of part of their community, which is why obviously we attend the FLIOA event. Our big sponsor of theirs and yours. We're happy to be able to sponsor.
We greatly appreciate
Marty, this year to get you out to the conference to provide the services, the information that you were able to put out to your members. So, the liability insurance, big picture, it just protects federal law enforcement officers when they get sued in their personal capacity, when they get placed under investigation for some sort of allegation of wrongdoing. We, in the law enforcement community, know that as internal affairs, officer of professional responsibility, inspector general investigations, or even, lo and behold, some Department of Justice criminal investigations. This gives law enforcement officers that peace of mind when sometimes they might find themselves on the other side of the table. And it's not because they've done anything wrong, okay? I like to say, this group is the particular group that has the most exposure. I would always jokingly say, because they got the 3 toys, right? They got the gun, the badge, and the car. The thing I just want to emphasize a lot, it's the badge. So it comes with the power, that you have incredible amount of power. Therefore, with that, because you can, take people's liberty away, and with that comes scrutiny. And that's really what we're there to protect.
Right.
What goes part and parcel with that when I say peace and mind, and I think which was a huge focus at this particular conference was also, the mental health. The wellness, the well-being
Absolutely.
of our law enforcement officers. And that's something that the national president of FLIOA, Larry Cosme, pretty passionate about, bringing to this year's convention. He recently just gave me a quote for us to kind of run on social media about the convention, if you will. I'll just read pieces of it. Larry says here, the 26th FLIOA convention was a great success due to the contributions of sponsors, partners, and members. The convention was really unique this year in that they provided the delegates and presidents with one-of-a-kind physical and mental health trainings to ensure their success in the field. They were also able to provide access to vital resources, like a lot of the vendors, Feds Protections, and others, so that agents and officers know that someone is watching their back while they're watching the country's back. FLIOA, there's over 30,000 members, with exceptional, member benefits. And Larry was really, passionate about and grateful to, the partnerships FLIOA has been able to forge over the years, not just with Feds Protection, but with all the vendors that were there, to include Jean and her group. I know we're going to talk about, and the FLIOA 111 project.
And I think that's a great segue to introduce our next guest that's joining us. So, Dr. Jean Kanakogi, she's a senior special agent for the U.S. government with extensive experience in conducting criminal investigations. She has a career spanning 23 years in law enforcement. She also has led investigator on several high-profile cases, including the attacks on 9/11. I think we could just do a whole show on you one day, Jean. We'll have you back, and we'll talk about some of this stuff, because she's got a great resume here, guys, so just bear with me. And many that focus on protecting public health, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Jean is a 5th-degree black belt in judo and a highly respected sensei. She was on the U.S. national judo team and won several medals in international tournaments. Most notable, Jean was one of the original singers of the ACLU, American Civil Liberty Union, suit to fight for women's right in the sport of judo. Very good. And the list goes on and on. She dedicates her time as a volunteer for the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, where she is the Director of Mental Health and Peer Support Services. In this monumental role, she is building a peer support program to support the mental health of the federal law enforcement community. Additionally, this role allows her to comment on bipartisan bills that directly impact the mental health and law enforcement officers, which is one of the key things that we're going to be talking about today. So, Leadheads, welcome in Dr. Jean Kanakogi.
Thank you, Marty. I just have to highlight, I don't sing. I was actually one of the original signers to fight.
Singing. I thought that didn't sound right. So she's a signer, not a singer. But she does sing the praises of the ACLU, right?
I was checking the fine print on that one as well.
So
that's what I get for not wearing my glasses.
Thank you for that fantastic introduction. And Tony, thank you so much for talking about having a badge and having all of that pressure and power, because part of having that badge is we have power, but we also have pressure. We live in a fishbowl. We're constantly scrutinized as federal law enforcement officers. So that pressure gets people to offer unsolicited opinions. We get judged. We also endure a ton of stress, whether it be cumulative stress, vicarious stress. We are exposed to more trauma in a lifetime as law enforcement officers and first responders than anybody who's not in this profession, and including, of course, military exposed to trauma. So one of the passions that Tony had mentioned was mental health. Larry Cosme, the president of FLIOA, is very passionate about mental health and wellness and fitness and overall well-being. So when he took over as the president of FLEOA, part of his agenda was to get people the mental health help that they needed, and also to highlight the wellness of our members, of our agents. Because if you think about it, the people keeping you safe, the listeners, keeping the borders safe, keeping the country safe, you would want somebody who's physically fit, mentally fit, and know that they have the safeguards and protections so they don't have to look over their shoulder and worry about their jobs every 30 seconds because they have feds really watching their back and having their back. So one of the things, and I know I'm going to bounce around a little bit, is at the most recent FLEOA convention, Larry Cosme said, we are going to highlight training, first time ever, in mental health and also overall well-being. Now, just going back 2 presidents historically, Nate Katura found mental health to be extremely important, and he started emphasizing and started creating those relationships with Acadia Health. And John Adler, I mean, he is a major proponent for advocating for mental health and wellness. So they started the ball, and Larry just picked it up and started running with it. So this convention, the first time ever, we had speakers from Acadia Health, the treatment placement specialists, who are, I refer to them as angels with legs. Bill Mazur and Joe Collins, both retired local law enforcement officers that have now gone to work as treatment placement specialists for Acadia Health. And what they do is they divide the country in half and take care of our members that need help by connecting them with culturally competent counselors. And when I say culturally competent counselors, imagine being a law enforcement officer and seeing just such horrific things, and you need to talk about it, and the counselor gets scared and leaves the room. I don't think that's a culturally competent counselor. So they need a counselor that can understand what's coming through the cop's eyes and coming out of the cop's mouth. They need counselors that understand the nuances of law enforcement. So that's one of the things that Acadia Health has been doing. We also brought in speakers to talk about their own experiences for suicide prevention. Mm-hmm. We had a very brave presenter, Chris Prohut, who came and talked about his own experience, a career-ending experience, but a life-saving experience, and really gave our membership the notion of knowing that it is okay to not be okay because there's help out there. And to smash that stigma and bridge that gap for getting people help is just a message that has to be consistent. It has to be consistent throughout every federal agency and every conversation. The old guard of, hey, suck it up, buttercup, that's not working any longer because you keep sucking it up and eventually you're going to explode. And when you explode, it's just not going to be pretty. And it's not just you that's affected. Your coworkers, your family, your friends. So to be able to reach out for help, I tell people, you know, when your kid is asking you, hey, Dad, or hey, Mom, can you teach me how to throw a baseball? You're so proud because they are asking you for help. Well, what's the difference of you saying, hey, I need some help. Something's not going right in my head. We had other speakers at the convention, which was a hard topic to discuss, but it's what to do after a suicide. Because everybody is sad. Yeah. But people are running around and they had no idea. You know, the cops, the concerns of police survivors, the the survivors of blue suicide, they are there to help prepare what to do. What does a department do? What do you do with the family? This is something that we don't train to prepare for. We train to do entry. We train to do warrants, arrests, defensive tactics, shooting, but we don't train. What do we do when there's a suicide? There's usually a guy or a girl in a department that knows somebody that knows something. Yeah. And by the time you find that, you miss the ball. So, and that leads me into what you said as far as my introduction, that being a volunteer for FLEOA as the director of mental health gives me an opportunity to work on bills that are bipartisan, because having support from both sides of the House is what we need. We don't, FLEOA never does, we don't get involved with politics per se, because we're really looking to for the betterment for our members. So recently, I'm beyond excited on the House passage of the COPS. The S-1502, it's Confidential Opportunities for Peer Support Counseling. And that's why they gave it the acronym COPS, counseling.
I wonder how long it took them to come up with that. Was that your doing, Tony?
No, not me. Gee. I can't take credit for that. Tony?
Just if I could just ask a quick question, and you can either answer it directly or you can weave it into your remarks. But one of the things I want to, it's a statement, and I'll lead to a question, from somebody that's been associated with the federal law enforcement community for the better part of 25 years on both sides of the fence. This whole concept, this whole realization that we need to care about our mental health as a law enforcement officer is something that's relatively new. It's a sea change because it was something that law enforcement officers were taught to ignore, to push to the side. There were all these questions on your national security forms, like the security clearance. You were taught not to feel those things. And if you put it out there and you essentially make yourself vulnerable, and then are you going to make yourself target for agency scrutiny, if you say you need help or if you say you're struggling on something. I wonder if you could, in your remarks, just sort of speak to kind of like where we are as a federal law enforcement community in kind of dealing with that past stigma and recognizing that wasn't good for anybody, for people to kind of like sit there. I worked at ATF. I worked at ATF in the wake of Waco, which was, a big deal. And there were a lot of people hurting, but maybe not asking for help.
Perfect. I'll pick that up right there. Tony, you did talk about the concern for the jobs, because that's the biggest thing that I hear. Hey, I need some help, but I'm afraid of my job scrutinizing me for asking for help. A lot of people that are having domestic issues and problems at home, they don't want to reach out for help because they're afraid of the scrutiny. So I had some really good conversations. First of all, what we're talking about a little bit is the old SF-86 in the equip form now. I believe it's question 21 that and there's a series of questions with question 21 that on a federal form that deals specifically, have you ever had counseling for mental health? Are you taking any psychotropic medications? And forgive me, this is off the top of my head.
That's okay.
So that being concerning and having these conversations, I'm actually having a dialogue with people at OPM to see how we can better formulate these questions, but yet still have them so that we can use this as a weed in, weed out process, but not a discriminatory process. Yeah. I know that HHS has been having these conversations as well and taking the lead and really encouraging people to seek counseling. And Tony mentioned earlier that we did have the mentality of telling law enforcement, oh, you're weak if you seek help, just, put it somewhere, you shouldn't feel this. And we start to anesthetize our feelings. And then what happens to that community that starts to anesthetize their feelings, they're still there. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's about trauma and where does trauma land. So then it lands somewhere in your body. You put it in a compartment. And how about this? You put that trauma and that exposure and those negative emotions in pill form, and you take that pill, and you don't know where it's going to land. And that's how trauma lands in your body. It could be a shoulder pain. It could be a bad stomach. It could be an ulcer. It can manifest into disease. So what we want to do is have people be able to talk about those exposures, talk about their emotions, and really have these conversations and not be worried. So one of the really important topics that we were just talking about is the confidential opportunities for peer support counseling, or the COPS Counseling Act, which is near and dear to my heart. I worked with people from Senator Catherine Cortez Masto's office, who she and Senator Chuck Grassley were the people that introduced this bill. And I actually helped author some of the language to make it very inclusive and really for the betterment of our special agents and of our federal community. And what's fantastic is once this gets signed, then of course the states can follow suit. So it really is leading change. And yesterday, huge win. First of all, this summer we passed in the Senate unanimously. And yesterday we passed in the House, I think it was 434-3. Nice. Overwhelming passage. Just all of these.
So now it's up to the president to sign off on it. So that's the only thing it's waiting on, right?
Yep. That's
which is how a bill becomes a law.
You remember that Saturday morning cartoon? I'm just a bill.
Junction.
Yes, I'm only a bill sitting on Capitol Hill. So talk about just the meat and potatoes of how this is going to benefit our law enforcement men and women with this act.
Okay. So with this act, peer support programs, they serve a valuable role in providing mental health to law enforcement and first responders. But as we discussed, confidentiality has left them underutilized.
So what is a peer support? Let's break that down.
Peer support Peer support program is one person who is, say me, I'm a federal agent. I talk to another federal agent or another law enforcement officer. So it's somebody who's trained in supporting each other, but it's not a mental health counselor. Gotcha. So it's not a psychologist or a social worker. It's actually another peer, like, hey brother, hey sister, been there, done that. Let me help you get through this. Mm-hmm. So that's really just getting it down to the basic substrate. And the federal law is needed to improve the confidentiality because it's not mental health, it's not a doctor, it's not a social worker. So that's where COPS comes into play. The Fraternal Order of Police did a survey, and 73% of those surveyed said that the peer support program would be helpful and they would take part of it. And those that actually utilize peer support programs, 3 out of 4 officers found it very helpful. But again, the confidentiality concerns were there. Yeah. So to help resolve this, they discussed that legislation needs to be done to support the confidentiality. So what this bill does, just in a nutshell, it provides confidentiality to federal law enforcement officers by restricting individuals who participate in a peer counseling session from disclosing communication that arise out of that peer support discussion. It defines the clear and necessary exceptions to confidentiality in circumstances, just like anybody else, would include explicit threats of suicide, any admission of criminal conduct, any explicit threat of imminent and serious physical harm or death to an individual, and any information relating to the abuse or neglect of a child, elder person, or vulnerable person, and any information that is required by law to be reported. But it also encourages the implementation of peer counseling programs within the entire first responder community by requiring the Department of Justice to make the best practices publicly available on their website. And then the DOJ is also required to provide a list of training programs for public safety officers to become peer support mentors. So this is huge. I think there's a 2-year window once it gets signed into law to start implementing these programs.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. So that's definitely a huge win for our mental health community, and appreciate everything that you're doing on that. If they want to get more information about this, our listeners, because we have a lot of police officers, men and women that listen to the show, how can they go and get more information about this and exactly what it entails?
The best way to follow this bill is go on congress.gov and put in S1502, COPS Counseling Act. And you can actually get text alerts and information alerts as it progresses. So I'm hoping this gets signed into law sooner rather than later, because our men and women in law enforcement, they're hurting. Like Tony had mentioned, that this has been a suppressed issue over the years, but now it's coming to fruition. Now, the more discussions we have, the more we talk about it, the more we say that there's help out there and that it's okay to not be okay, even temporarily, the more people are going to reach out. This bill alone will save countless lives because they'll have the opportunity to reach out and talk to someone. And sometimes you don't have to talk about what's even bothering you. Sometimes, like in scuba diving, you off gas at 15 feet. Well, they need to off gas. They're at 15 feet, and those bubbles are building up. And sometimes they don't even know which end is
Fellow
up.
Scuba
but
diver.
Reaching out and talking. Yep. And reaching out to someone that knows which end is up and can reach out their hand and say, hey, brother, hey, sister, I'm here. Let's talk.
And just for clarity, for my own clarity, would this be, for an example, let's say you and I are in the same department. I've got an issue. We're friends. And I just come to you and I vent. Like you said, I open up and I talk. In the past, is there some sort of a mandate that if or you come to me and you say something that's concerning me, do I have to report this to my superiors? So what's the purpose in the confidentiality? Do they feel obligated that they have to, or they'll get in trouble? Is that kind of what it is, or?
Yeah, because they may feel obligated, or maybe they just don't want to hear it. Just not knowing is better sometimes. So when you have a trained peer support counselor, and there's a lot of training to become a peer support counselor, you have to go through understanding human behavior. There's a lot of research.
So it's an actual designated kind of position. It's like, okay, this is our department, not our counselor, but this is our peer person that you can go and talk to. Okay.
And not only is it a peer person, one of the things that I would love to see implemented, because there are so many, I think 70 different federal agencies. So if you have a federal agency with federal law enforcement that has 6 agents nationwide, and you pick up the phone and talk to a peer, well, you know what? It's somebody you probably know, most likely. So what I would like to do is see a peer counseling program, a nationwide counseling program, where if somebody picks up the phone and you're with a smaller OIG and you end up talking to an agent with FBI, ATF, Border Patrol, they don't know you. They don't know you from a hole in the wall. They don't know where you're from. They only know what you tell them. And that's what I would love to see.
Yeah.
But I just want to you can't emphasize. I mean, at first blush, it may not seem like that big of a deal, or like the most, impactful, piece of federal legislation coming down the pike. But, it is a very important sort of step to kind of break down those barriers, in order to let people, deal with their mental health, head on.
Yeah.
I mean, as we said, there are two really sort of barriers that I always see. There's kind of the employment practical one. And that's the one that Gene talked about. How do I fill out this form? Do I have to disclose this on the form? And what's this really going to mean? Am I going to have to answer all these questions?
Going to be on my permanent record, that kind of stuff.
Right. And then, frankly, there's the more important one. There's the barrier we create for ourselves. We're all big, bad people out here in federal law enforcement. Some of us are even black belts in judo and things like that.
6 degrees.
We don't ask for help. We're kicking butt and taking names. Putting it out there in law and having somebody else to talk to, acknowledges, that you don't have to be ashamed. You don't have to apologize for feeling this way. It's as important getting back from having shoulder surgery like I just had.
There you go. Yeah.
And, to echo what Tony said, we go out into the field and we do everything to protect ourselves. We put on our vest, we put on our leg holster, our helmets, our gloves. I mean, we're totally tacked out, and whatever we could fit on our bat belt, we have. So we protect ourselves. But now you strip away all that armor. And I am a huge advocate for not only the mental health, but also the FLIOA 111 project, which is teaching martial arts to law enforcement so that you don't have to go to the bat belt right away and you can be more confident in the hands-on. And also the career health, what Feds offers. That I consider what Feds offers career health, knowing that your back is being watched. Because agencies will eat their own.
Great point.
And I've seen it in the last 23, 24 years in the federal government. I was an instructor down at FLETC for a while, and I've seen agencies eat their own even while they're in the academy. So having Feds career health, mental health, reaching out to Arcadia, reaching out to me, and also being involved with the martial arts. Being a 5th degree black belt in judo, I teach part of the judo component for the FLIO 111 project.
Very nice.
And something it just dawned on me, something that I deal a lot with at Feds Protection are cases involving fatalities and shootings and things like that, and agencies are generally very good at offering similar peer type counseling, grief counseling, and things like that whenever they're involved in a shooting. And I deal a lot with these agents like immediately thereafter, so their adrenaline's running. They're feeling no pain still. They're just getting me the facts. I'm trying to get them a lawyer. But, in my retro, what I tell them, it's always the last thing I say. I go, this is the last thing I'm going to say. And it might be the most important thing, is they're going to make all this counseling available to you. You need to take advantage of that. Okay? If you listen to nothing else I say, you need to take advantage of that. This is not the time, to be macho. Because whatever happened, in that event where there was a shooting, you're going to be processing that. Like maybe if that didn't go down this way, it could have happened like this. And if you're, and if you're not dealing with that, if you haven't processed that all the way through, that could impact and affect how you react in the next life and death situation. That could affect you, or others that you're with. So having more counseling available like this, or letting them know that it's okay.
Knowing that there's laws now that's going to protect them from stepping up and talking about their issues and not having to worry about losing their jobs or not getting rehired or, whatever the case may be, whatever their fears may be, is huge. And, to cut down on the suicides that we have within the community, our military, law enforcement, men and women, I think it was 22 a day, and that's just the military, because they don't factor in the law enforcement, the firefighters, the first responders on the suicide rate. So it's a lot higher than that. So anything that they can do to get people to encourage them.
The big number you see. I mean, all the substance abuse or other, mental health issues.
Yeah, domestic violence. All
themselves, on like that, but simply because you're not dealing with the core issue.
Right. Exactly. So I think this is definitely huge. It's it's definitely not a bag of potato chips. This is a great step forward for our law enforcement men and women in being able to get the help that they need mentally to go along with their physical and the other attributes that make them the sheepdog, the protectors of our society. We, like you said, Jean, we want them healthy in all aspects.
It's so true. And Marty, I really truly commend FLIOA for being the federal leader to get this done. And, of course, it wasn't just me. It wasn't just Larry. It was a whole team that really worked on this. They referred to me a lot deferred to me a lot because as the volunteer director of mental health, this is so near and dear to my heart. Unfortunately, we've all seen, if you've been in law enforcement long enough, you've seen the degradation that happens on the mental psyche on so many people exposed to all sorts of trauma. So the whole team at FLIOA and just the backing of everybody behind this, I'm so grateful for.
Absolutely. So, Jean, where can our listeners go and learn about you, get in touch with you? You're an author as well. You've written a book. Talk about that real quick.
Sure. I wrote a book called Get Up and Fight, and my website is www.rustykanakogi.com. And the first challenge is to spell Kanakogi. But I'm sure if you put it in there a few times, the internet will be kind and Google will lead you. So the book is the life of the mother of women's judo, an ordinary person that did extraordinary things, changed the world for women's judo, and fought to get women's judo into the Olympics. She took on and sued the International Olympic Committee and won, sued them for discrimination. She went to go put an injunction on the 1984 Olympics because women's judo was not included. And I was one of the original signers, circling back to that complaint. Also, one of the people who signed the complaint was Jeremy Glick, who was the person credited for saying, "Let's roll," on the flight that went down in Shanksville. He was a judo player. So I highlight that he always did the right thing, supporting women's judo and fought to save lives that way. But going back to the story, Rusty, born and raised in Coney Island, was just really an ordinary person that found her purpose and would not let women suffer inequality in sport. So it wasn't just judo. She teamed up with Billie Jean King, and they fought with for Title IX, and just really opened the doors. The book is called Get Up and Fight.
Mm-hmm.
And in that book, the reader will find the story so intriguing that they'll find their own Get Up and Fight.
Is there a documentary or something about her?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. So we're looking and considering both scripted and unscripted now.
Yeah, I think that would make a great documentary there. So the website, one more time.
www.rustykanokogi.com, and that's Kanokogi.
Very good. Tony Fresh,
How are we doing?
We are going to get into our interviews now from the FLIOA conference, and we're going to kick it off with the one we did with you and Brenda. So we're going to roll that in right now, and then we've got a couple of other vendor interviews that we're going to roll in here. So lead heads, kick back, relax, and we'll be right back.
Law enforcement actions, even if fully justified, are going to be scrutinized with 20/20 hindsight. When you, as a federal law enforcement officer, face a life-altering event, you want both the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association and Feds Protection in your corner when it matters most. Feds Protection is in the unique position of protecting federal agents and officers from financial hardship with professional liability insurance. Regardless of how well you think you do your job every day, you are not immune to allegations of wrongdoing or lawsuits alleging a constitutional tort arising out of a job action. The cost is partially reimbursed by the Agency for Law Enforcement Officers. So for less than $1 a day, you simply can't afford not to have this protection. Enrollment takes just 5 minutes. Call 866-955-FEDS or visit www.fedsprotection.com.
You didn't know Tony had a sense of humor, did you?
I'm the employee he never wanted. Did
Right.
I tell you that story? I swear to God.
Do you want to tell it on air here?
No.
Do you want to tell it on air? Tell it on air. Is that something that can be shared
I don't know.
to the
No.
world?
I was the best employee you never wanted.
So leadheads, those voices that you hear are the people that made it possible for us to attend the 2021 FLIOA National Conference. That's the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, which our leadheads are very familiar with. This is our third or fourth national convention that we've been to. And we look forward to it every 2 years
Yes.
because they do it biennially.
Yeah, they do it like every 18 months, actually.
There you go,
It would make sense if they did it every 2 years.
Yeah.
But they like to do it
That's the
every year
way
and
it
a
was
half.
explained to me.
Yeah.
So, but it's year and there's not a word for that, I would think. Every year and a half.
Every year and a half.
18 months, right?
All right.
It's called 18 months.
18 months.
Every 18 months. So we've got Tony Vernette,
That is correct.
Tony Fresh.
Teddy Fresh.
No, you're Tony Fresh.
Tony Fresh.
Tony Fresh. And we got Brenda Fresh, Brenda Wilson,
Fresh.
joining us, and they are with Feds Protection. And we're going to get into what they do and how they protect our sheepdog, the men and women that protect us. But first off, tell our listeners a little bit about each of you. So
Sure.
Start with Tony.
Sure. I am, Tony Vernetti, the president and founder of Feds or Feds Protection, and we provide professional liability insurance to federal employees. I'm also an attorney, but the leadhead should not hold that against me.
They won't.
I like to say I'm a recovering litigator. Started this program 14 years ago. I like to say on the second floor of my home in my underwear on an old kitchen desk.
Not in your garage?
No, it was on the second floor. And, we started from policy number 1. Nobody didn't hand me, a book of business.
Yeah.
And one of the first organizations to support and endorse us was FLIOA, the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association. So naturally, they're a group that's near and dear to me. I appreciate their support over the years. I've known them, even in my previous days when I myself used to be a federal employee. I used to be an attorney for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms.
The big ATF.
So, yeah. So, obviously knew FLIO then, and then at my old law firm, where I was a partner at Shaw, Bransford and Roth, where I, defended federal law enforcement officers when, they either get sued or under investigation. Mm-hmm. So, this opportunity to start this company back 14 years ago just presented itself to me, and I, really took a risk and jumped and just really thought I could run a program that does right by federal employees. And I think that's what, with good people like Brenda on my side here, my staff, and I really think that's what we're doing. I'm famous for saying I didn't leave a very successful law practice, to be an insurance agent. Yeah. That's not what we're doing. We're really trying to run a program that does right by federal employees. And I think the groups that we work with, like FLIOA, they really see that and they sense that.
There's definitely a need for this type of protection, for our law enforcement men and women. And I mean, how did you go about seeing, that niche, that gap?
Yeah, so I did all the legal work off of a competitor program, and just really saw some changes that were being made by that other company, and really thought that we can do it better.
Yeah, they're missing the target somewhere.
Well, and just do it in a way that sort of really respected the governmental interest. Mm-hmm. The federal government encourages law enforcement officers and managers and supervisors, intelligence folks to get this insurance with their pocketbook because they pay for half of it. So it's essentially how we say it's an employee benefit, and you ought to be taking advantage of it. You wouldn't leave the 401k, the TSP match on the table that the government gives you. They shouldn't, do that with this as well.
So just to paint a more clear picture exactly what it is that you guys cover, give an example of a law enforcement man or woman that needed to use it. Why would they use this? Under what circumstances?
Yeah, let me just give like a bigger one that's not necessarily law enforcement specific, but it's certainly one that everyone can appreciate. And then I'll give a law enforcement one. I'll do the ATF gun runner. Fast and Furious example.
Okay.
So there's three basic coverages. There are your typical insurance coverage, which are civil lawsuits, like when you get sued, like they sue you personally, right?
Yeah.
And then is DOJ defending me or not? Can I be liable? And we can get into that in a little bit. And then the second kind of coverage is criminal investigations. Any act, or omission that results in a criminal investigation. People think my law enforcement guys here would say, like, look, I put bad people away. I'm not the one being investigated.
Sure.
But like I tell them all the time, there's very little you can do wrong in the federal government and not also have it be a violation of Title 18, which is a criminal code. And then but a lot big bang for their buck is administrative and disciplinary stuff. And so that's where they're under investigation. They can be disciplined, any of these different kinds of investigations. So one big one I'll give an example of was the impeachment proceedings. The first impeachment proceeding, involving everything that was going on in the Ukraine, all those Foreign Service officers had to testify, on Capitol Hill. And if they didn't have a professional liability insurance policy, the Department of State was not sending lawyers to go up there with them. They had to go out there and hire their own lawyers. So we represented Ambassador Bill Taylor, was a Feds member, and some others. They got a lawyer to go up there and represent them for that impeachment proceedings. I mean, that is just not something, those Foreign Service officers didn't want nor need that 10 minutes of fame that they were getting.
Sure.
So having their own counsel up there was really, really important. A good law enforcement example is the famous, ATF, whether it's the case Gun Runner or Fast and Furious. This is where where folks were very critical of ATF for allowing the guns to walk to Mexico.
Yeah.
And essentially, guns aren't like drugs. Guns aren't contraband. You can legally purchase a gun, right? But what they were doing is people were doing what's called a straw purchase, right? So I'm not a felon, unlike Brenda over here. So if Brenda needed a gun, I would,
for this example
only, and if I bought a gun, and then Brenda gave me $100 bill, I went and bought a gun, and I gave it to her. I kept my $100 bill. That's what they call a straw purchase, right? So they would bust us, but they're just getting us. So what they were really worried, ATF was really trying to do, is the drug cartel was buying these guns, let's say, with these straw purchases, and they weren't making any headway. You're just getting the one, the two, the three, how it's happening. So they had this mindset. They wanted to let and see where these guns were going.
Put trackers in.
Yeah, but and see where they're all going to kind of like do the big takedown. Rather than they wanted to go elephant hunting rather than deer.
I've got a good friend that wrote a book about this.
Okay.
Mike Deddy. I don't know if you're familiar with
Sounds familiar.
Mike Deddy or not, but he was involved with that. He was the actual gun dealer, broker.
Yeah, so we represented several of the three of the case agents that were involved in that. I don't think they would care that I'm saying that because I think we did a good job for them. But what happened is one of the guns, the Border Patrol agent Brian Terry was killed in Texas. And when they came in, to do a sweep and all that stuff, some of these guns that were allowed to walk to Mexico were there. It wasn't the gun that killed Agent Terry, but it was misreported that it was, and you're never going to unring that bell to the mother of Brian Terry, right? So it started a lot of investigations and backlash and things like that. So that's a good example of it really started with administrative investigation. So the Department of Justice Inspector General investigated the heck out of all the agents who did that, and were they unnoticed to not do that?
Yeah.
Without getting too much into the facts. And then the agency's internal affairs, Office of Professional Responsibility investigated it. And then Congress wanted to get involved and they wanted to investigate because, they do, what they do. DOJ, the IG obviously are criminal investigators, so they looked at it from a criminal perspective. The FBI, interesting enough, got early on in those cases, just cleared everybody because it's what they do in those shooting cases. It ultimately, hit those two parts of the coverage area, and then later came to civil lawsuits.
Yeah.
There was another related
family member suing.
Yeah, family member suing is whether anybody. It's what the kind of lawsuits here. Federal agents do not have absolute immunity for what's called these personal capacity lawsuits, like for lawsuits they have under the Federal Tort Claim Act. They're mostly vulnerable, the agents, for lawsuits for what we call Bivens actions, constitutional torts. So these are Fourth Amendment unreasonable search and seizure kind of cases. The signature case, the Bivens case, I always like to tell the story, was the precursor to the DEA. They called it the 6 unknown narcotics officers. They went in, classic row house in Brooklyn, went into the wrong house, dragged out the wrong guy, paraded him up and down the street in front of his neighbors, right?
Made a big issue
while he was
of
eating
it.
his pizza pie, and made a big issue of it. And so it was an activist Supreme Court, and that's when they said, look, hey, federal employees can actually be sued for, they should bear the burden for wrongful, constitutional acts like this. And that's what created, it's what's called a judicially derived tort. And then in response to that, Congress said, hey, all right, these guys can be liable for just doing their job. We think they should go get this insurance, and we want to pay for some of it. And that's kind of like the history. So Brenda, let me introduce Brenda.
Brenda Wilson.
Brenda Wilson.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Because she's, look, like I said, I'm the lawyer, I'm the boring guy, but
those stories are great, and I would probably love to hear more.
We'll get back to
the gun
it,
running,
but she's really got like boots on the ground.
Yeah.
In the federal community, she's the one head of my business and marketing, strategic operations. That she's out and about a lot. And, she's talking to people about what's going on, what their concerns are, what their worries are. So I want to introduce you, Brenda, and let you talk a little bit about
the Leadheads, Brenda.
Say hi and let them know what you're hearing, what federal employees and particularly the law enforcement community is concerned about.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show, Marty.
You're very welcome.
Leadheads.
Get closer to the mic.
All right. I'm close.
There you go. I'm going to turn you up.
Yeah, I think...
'cause you're a quiet mouse.
I am.
There you go. I got you up now. You're good.
All right. Thank you. I'm quiet on here.
Yeah. You're not shy. Brenda's not a shy person. Trust me.
So I think the most interesting thing about working with FLIOA is the changes I've seen in the last 10 years, changes, just within the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So much has changed.
The environment that they're facing,
yes,
both internally and externally.
Yes,
all the negativity that they're getting hit with.
Really and truly, when Tony started Feds, we didn't have the social media that we
Wasn't
have.
as big as it was 14 years ago.
It absolutely wasn't. The 24-hour news cycles, these opinionated, the problem with all
It's not
of that-
news anymore. It's opinion.
It is. It really is. And, what happens with that is someone makes an allegation or a comment, and it's circumstance. What people don't realize. So, when I was trying to sell the policy, 12 years ago to agents, they would say, well, I'll never do anything wrong. And if I did, the agency would defend me. What people don't realize is once an allegation is made and it's out there with all of the platforms that people are watching and listening to right now, it makes it difficult, very, very difficult for these people to crawl back up out of that.
Well, especially when their own department or agency is after them also and trying to save face. And
Well, yeah.
So they need
they're
protection.
responding to the
so it makes sense that they would pay for their own instead of the agency paying for it as well.
Well, and that's the thing I think that takes them by surprise. These are dedicated civil servants, law enforcement officers that get up every day. There's a right and they're very much right and wrong, right? There's no middle ground. And they just never, that's the biggest barrier. People want to buy this insurance. They can never envision themselves doing anything wrong, and the agency's not going to have my back. And when they don't, they're shocked and concerned. And what I tell them is, look, you have, like I always say, the federal law enforcement officers are more vulnerable to these complaints and lawsuits and things like that because they got the three toys. They got the gun, they got the badge, and they got the car. And those are the three things that get them in trouble the most. But kind of what Brenda's talking about is more the badge. And what I mean about that is the power. So you got a tremendous amount of power, right? You can deprive liberty. You can put somebody away. Right, you can put bad people away, and with that comes checks and accountability. And
Absolutely.
So when complaints are made, they need to investigate you. Like Brenda talks about just the way all the news cycles have changed everything. Just go back last year, for example, how quickly things can happen before the George Floyd incident. In tragedy in Minnesota, they were federal law enforcement, all first responders were being lauded and congratulated. They're on the front lines of the pandemic. They're out there. They're doing great. They're doing this. They're doing that. And boy, didn't that change overnight?
Overnight,
right? Overnight. And then they were
flip
But
of
then
a
you
coin.
add onto that the exhaustion,
fatigue,
and that's when errors, that's or
And
that's
it-
when complaints.
And especially now where, they're shorthanded, where a lot of them are just like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. And the
general
retire, they
public
quit.
has absolutely no idea. People just don't know what these guys are going through. I just talked to someone that I've known for 12 years now, and he's got about a year and a half left, and he looks tired. And I said that to him, and he's tired.
Yeah.
And it breaks your heart because we know what they're doing. We respect it. We applaud it. We appreciate it. But when you're dealing with fatigue and you're dealing with
All the
morale,
negativity.
yes, it's devastating. It is very
Wears on you.
It
Well,
really
without a
does.
doubt. And
It
then,
really
like you
does.
said, then that leads to more mistakes. and errors.
It does. It absolutely does. And let me tell you something. Tony always says. So what happens a lot is.
What does Tony always say?
Well, I'll let him say it in a minute. He says it better.
Tony
than me.
Fresh.
What am I
So
saying?
Tony Fresh. When an allegation is made, they come in and they investigate that allegation, or they look into that allegation. What people don't realize is that when someone is being investigated, it's not limited to just that allegation that was made. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, I mean,
better?
look, they're so.
I know where you're
It's a
going with
big
it. Yeah.
deal.
Well, they
So-
come in. Look, I used to say, this particularly now, my IG friends in the IG are not going to like that I'm going to say this, but I'm going to pick on them a little bit. I mean, it used to be that IGs saw it as part of their job, just as much as part of their job, to clear federal officials as it is to make cases.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just human nature. They spend time. They're investigating you for 6 months to a year or whatever, and they'll look at the underlying thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, was the law violated when those guns walked to Mexico?
Mm-hmm.
But then they just, they're looking, they spread their...
As they're digging, they dig up other things.
So I think
Maybe
what she
questionable.
wanted me to say is like, look, if they put a magnifying glass over any one of us, none of us are perfect,
Yeah.
right? The microscope, it's like the old law enforcement trick. If you want to look inside somebody's car, you don't need a warrant or anything like that. Just follow them for a mile. They'll commit a traffic violation, and then you can pull them over. So the same thing here. I mean, none of us are perfect, and that's sometimes the concern. I mean, they get in, they'll look at false statements and different things and see what sticks.
But, we have a lot of IG agents that they're really getting their asses handed to them by the leadership in their agencies. And it's really tough on them. They have a tough job. Yeah. They're the guys that are investigating.
Where your organization comes in.
Yeah.
To help provide them
the
advice, the protection that they need.
And Tony, we get mad at him for this, but we do appreciate you for this. We all do. Everybody out there. We provide legal consultations with our coverage. Mm-hmm. He goes above and beyond all the time. He never leaves anybody out there hanging. He cares. And these guys know it. Especially here, the guys and girls here at FLIOA.
Yeah.
They get it.
And that's just not me. That's my whole team. And it's and they know that that's important to me, that they treat each one of these as individuals.
You're talking about the legal services. Do you guys provide that, or do you outsource that to?
So if it's a cover, so what Brendan was talking about is there are in-house sort of free legal consultations that they get for things that aren't squarely covered by the insurance, or what we call a pre-complaint thing, kind of like a hotline. We do those. I'll do those in-house. There's another attorney that works with me as well. But the core legal work, if it's a covered claim, the gun runner cases that I talked about, the Ambassador Bill Taylor that I talked about, all those goes out to one of my panel law firms to be represented. Our primary.
So you've got like partnerships with different firms around
partnerships
the country.
that we work with. The primary one for these administrative ones is Shaw, Bransford, and Roth. Which for over 30 years have been the absolute leader in representing federal employees and particularly law enforcement officers. But we have several others that we go to depending upon kind of case that it is, and they, and they're all hand selected by my staff, by me and my claims office. We run our own claims, and they need to be drinking the Kool-Aid with us. I mean, they need to understand what it is we're trying to do, in representing federal officials.
Yeah. What would you say, because this is a voluntary type coverage, they don't have to get this coverage, and they'd be silly not to, since their agencies or most of their agencies cover a portion of it.
Yeah.
What's the biggest excuse that you hear why they don't get it?
It's just complacency. And it's like we said, it'll never happen to me. Or laziness, never getting around to it. Just don't think they need it. Or agency lawyers are wrongfully telling them they didn't need it.
That's the biggest.
I didn't know about it when I was an agency lawyer. But here's what I say to that, because I used to really struggle, over the years. Because one of the things that when I started at Feds was really on a passion of education, because I found that there were so many people that didn't know about the insurance, didn't get it. And that's the part of I love my practice of law because I love helping people. What I hated about the practice of law was the business of law.
Yeah.
Because if you got to pay me $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 of your own money, I used to always say I couldn't afford me. I would just go get another job. That if you just would have spent $150, which is all it costs annually after you get reimbursed, you would have had up to $1 million, $200,000, all legal services covered. So
$10,000 is a lot of money.
So I mean, it's they'd have to get second and third mortgages out in their homes. They get things against their 401k.
Yeah, it's financially ruined.
These are civil servants.
So I used to struggle with all these examples. You asked me. Everybody wants to know these examples. And I used to run this segment on our website called "Yesterday's Headlines, Today's Coverage." And I would just open the newspaper back when you had newspapers, right?
Yeah.
What's that?
I would read a headline, right? And then we would write, if this was you, this federal employee, whether it's a GSA scandal, whether, it's 9/11, Waco, Ruby Ridge,
good examples,
the torture investigations, the wildland fires, all those things, all those different scandals, the GSA scandal in Vegas. You would have just been fully covered. So I used to try to give all these examples, and it was exhausting because, again, the police would say, that would never be me, that would never be me, that would never be me. And I finally came to this conclusion, and it was a financial advisor that used to write for the Federal Times that said this to me that really resonated. He says, listen, if you have any exposure right, any financial professional exposure that you can insure away at a very low cost, you should always do that, even if the probability of you needing it is very low.
Sure.
And so that's why I say, like, you can buy the insurance your whole career, 20, 30 years. It's costing you $6,000, $7,000.
It's not even. It's costing less than $4,000.
Well, whatever it's costing. Let's just use $6,000 as an example, right? And only have peace of mind, right, that it was there in case you need it, and never have used it. When you retire, right? There's a lot of guys walking around here getting ready to retire.
Yeah.
It's not changing your standard of living. It's not going to dictate what kind of car you're driving. It's not going to dictate, what house you're buying in Florida. Right. But if you got to pay me $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 of your hard-earned money, you might be driving a Yugo with a factory sealed hood.
$50,000 an hour, depending on what your
your
case is.
It's
just
going
the
to impact
philosophy
your
of
retirement.
It's the philosophy of most insurance. It's like life insurance. If you're healthy and great shape, and you're like, I'm great, nothing's going to happen to me. I mean, but there's still a chance that you're going to die for some reason. Car insurance, getting in a wreck,
Well,
those probabilities are a lot higher.
Car is compulsory, but I think it's more like an umbrella. People don't really consider umbrellas sometimes.
Yeah.
For
$150 for peace of mind, is that a year, a month?
How much? A year. It's 1 year.
So 150. That's it.
Yeah.
Why would they not do that?
I mean, that doesn't even pay for both of Brenda's shoes. It's just one of her shoes here.
So
how are you able to provide that type coverage for only $150 a year?
Well, because it's like in insurance, you're pulling the risk.
Yeah.
So we're pulling.
Can I get this even though I'm not a federal employee?
No.
We can make you.
I'm going to give you $150 right now.
Yeah.
You can always have access to me, Marty.
Oh, great! Thank you, Tony Fresh, ladies and gentlemen. Tony Fresh.
What's really great about it is, when we work with the FLIOA board. Mm-hmm. The national leadership, the local leadership, they really support what we do. We're appreciative of that because a lot of the agents that are in the field, the only place they're hearing it from is through FLIOA or their professional association. So I still run into guys and girls that they never heard of it. How could you be on the force for 10 years? How could you
not know that you need this type coverage?
It's mind blowing. It's so
especially
upsetting.
in today's
it's
environment.
Heartbreaking.
The real problem is then we get calls, all the time after right?
the fact.
Like I always say, look, you can't get in a car accident on Monday, buy your insurance on Wednesday, or the time to get your insurance is not after the National Weather Service names the hurricane. Mm-hmm. John Adler, former national president to FLIOA, gave us a famous quote that says, buying your liability insurance after the claim has happened is like putting body armor on a corpse.
He nailed it.
Yeah.
He nailed it. And Larry Cosme, he's so supportive now. Nate, huge proponent.
No, the whole board, Matt, Enid, everybody is.
Nate Couture been on the show a couple times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nate.
Yeah. And our local guys, they get it. And like I said, it's heartbreaking when someone calls you after the fact and they don't understand what it's all about, or they know what Feds Protection. Oh, I know what Feds Protection is. Oh, I need that if I get in trouble. But it's
no, you need it before you get in trouble.
Yes, exactly.
You're just not, you're just, what I tell them is you're just not going to get through a career in federal law enforcement and be doing your job, right? Yeah, if you're parking somewhere and going to sleep every night, fine.
Yeah.
But and be doing your job and not have a complaint filed against you. And when that happens, hopefully the agency defends and does all this stuff, but their duty of loyalty is to the agency. Not you personally.
They're only going to defend you to a certain extent.
Yeah. So you definitely would, should always want somebody, on your side that's looking out for your particular interests. Yeah. That's not to say yours and the agencies aren't aligned.
But especially for how affordable it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know how much. That was going to be one of my questions. Like, so how much would this cost?
So it's
$150 a year.
So it's $290, and the agency pays for half of it. It's down to and then FLIOA, we give them another $10 discount.
Yeah.
It's funny is when we explain this to people outside the federal workforce, such as yourself,
it's
a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Like I always say, it's like with my brother.
I thought I'd have a job for 3 years. I swear to God.
I always say this about my brother. Hope he's not listening. But it's like,
who knows nothing about nothing. And I was explaining it to him. He's like, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But they just, I mean,
I'm going to send him the link. By the way. He's going to hear this.
Well, it's tough. I mean, I've got guys that I have known for 10 years. They're in their late 20s. They're sitting in these rooms that surround us here this week, and they think nothing's bad. They think they're invincible. They think they're invincible at 28, 29 years old. And they look away from me. They walk by me and they look away from me like, I'm not going to talk to you because I don't need that.
It's like, that's for crooked cops.
Yeah.
I don't need that.
Yeah.
Right.
It's so
well, and the
That's not what it's
agency,
about.
the agency lawyers are giving them misinformation. So they keep saying, look, as long as you're in your scope of your employment, we're going to protect you. We're going to cover you.
Why wouldn't the internal attorneys advise them? Why wouldn't they want them to get it?
Because
client.
They don't fully understand it. Number one, they're only thinking about it from a civil perspective.
Mm-hmm.
That we would cover them. DOJ would rep. It's an institutional interest. It'd only be the rare case where we're not repping. They're not thinking of the other policy provisions, nor do they want them to have lawyers if they're coming after them.
Mm-hmm.
If they're the ones that are coming after them. Do you really want them to have a fully funded, insured legal defense?
And if you don't think that the interest of the United States changes,
Oh yeah,
because that's the test of whether they're going to rep is is it scope of employment and the interest of the United States? And people always say, well, what does that mean? Interest of the United States? It means whatever the hell the Department of Justice wants it to mean.
that's
So
scary.
if you're being investigated for wrongdoing for the very same reason you're being sued, they're not going to be on both sides of that. We've got several cases right now,
conflict of interest. Yeah, at that point,
lawsuits right now where we're defending because DOJ has declined rep. So
It's a tough thing. And when we go out there, we tell them, we talk about feds and FLIOA as a package deal. We don't recommend feds without FLIOA. We don't recommend FLIOA without feds.
Right.
Combined, they're paying $300 a year
Right.
for everything
And
that
getting
feds
just-
protection and FLIOA has to offer.
Right.
complete coverage.
I mean that was Marty's bar bill last night.
right?
Yeah.
That was just my bar bill alone.
But I do want to mention, because I know we're talking a lot about law enforcement, but it's all federal employees are eligible for the insurance, and it's the groups that we say are most vulnerable are law enforcement, national security folks, managers, supervisors, executives, wildland firefighting, if you can believe it. If a fire goes bad and somebody gets injured or hurt, they come in and run a manslaughter investigation against the incident commander to see if they were negligent.
Oh, wow.
And then there's all kinds of investigations that happen.
Yeah.
Like OSHA comes in and they want to tell you how to keep a burning forest a safe work environment. So there's that.
Do you get PETA come in too for the animals? And
So I'll give you a good example.
Okay.
If you like the PETA case. So I had a national superintendent for a national park under investigation because in New Mexico, because she granted a waiver to an organization, a group, so that they can run a marathon through the national park.
okay.
All right, it's in Bear Country. All right.
Oh,
So
I already see this.
So this female runner, got attacked by a black bear, and she played dead. So I guess it's the opposite thing happened. I guess you're supposed to do that for a grizzly, not a black bear. You're supposed to, anyway, she played, and
she did the wrong thing.
well, the problem is the bear was guarding its cubs. It had some cubs there, so this little, because
No matter what you do,
Mama bear
ain't
was
happy.
having some. So
Yeah.
Mama bear attacked her. She played dead and lived. Okay, but there's a law in New Mexico that says if a wild animal attacks a human, the animal's got to be put down. They put the bear down.
Oh,
What happens to the baby bears? They die because no mama bear.
bear.
PETA gets involved. Why are you running marathons through Bear Country?
Yeah.
And it became a whole thing. So they were investigating. So that's a good example how somebody is doing their job, right? And something happens that's completely out of their control,
Right.
and they got under investigation because of it. So yeah, so you have those people. You have all the regulatory people. Anybody dealing with the public. Anybody dealing
And
financial
that's a great
stuff.
story that you bring up there too, because we were talking about law enforcement, but this is any federal employee.
Any
that
federal
you-
employee.
that you guys cover. Any
Yeah.
federal employee.
Yeah, whether you're a doctor, medical professionals, doctors at the VA are having a tough time in wake of the Phoenix scandal.
Yeah.
With the wait times and things like that.
Veterinarians are
Federal
completely
veterinarians,
and
air
utterly-
traffic controllers.
Yeah.
So there you go,
you'd be
Leadheads.
surprised some of the stuff that we see that.
So this opens up to a lot more of our listeners now that maybe they were just focused.
It's
this
not
is
just
every federal
everybody
employee.
Everybody jokes
It's not
about,
just law enforcement.
federal
Contract.
federal employees, but it's these people are really overworked right now. They're spread really thin. Really thin.
Yeah,
IRS.
you got to get closer to that microphone. Get closer to that microphone.
It's the only time ever that anyone's ever said I'm not loud enough. So sorry.
So how do they get in touch with you guys if they want to get more information, find out about it, and then ultimately they're going to just go ahead and sign up?
The easiest thing to do is just get on our website, fedsprotection.com. It's pretty user friendly. Tons of information on there. They can call us at 866-955-FEDS. It's 955-3337. Anybody who answers the phone can answer a question. You don't go into some call bank and got to get a call back. And we
from India or
no, we're on that.
Bangladesh,
and we'll answer it. And that's something that I really, we really pride ourselves on.
We're proud of that.
And look, they also can have direct access to me, to Brenda.
Mm-hmm.
My email is Tony@fedsprotection.com. Brenda@fedsprotection.com. Not fancy.
I get calls 24/7. He gets calls 24/7. It's it's the job.
Can you guys take over the customer support for Verizon?
Absolutely. It's the problem with monopolies. They don't care.
I'm telling you. Tell me that's not a monopoly, right?
Yeah.
So a very valuable service that you guys are providing to federal employees. I would say our law enforcement men and women, but it's all federal employees.
Yep. Yes.
So if you listeners, if you fall under that category, you're a federal employee and you've never heard of this, get in touch with Tony, get in touch with Brenda. They can go into more details about this for you. Shoot me an email and I can get you in touch with them. Very accessible, like Tony said. And I think it's a no-brainer. So if I've got listeners out there, I know I've got the smartest listeners of any podcast, bar none, even Joe Rogan. I got smarter listeners than Joe Rogan. Then you guys need to get on board with this. So, Tony, Brenda, thank you guys so much.
Thank you
for allowing us to come to the FLIOA National Convention, the 2021, we're going to call it.
Yeah.
I don't think they have numbers on theirs.
Yeah.
I thought they did, but maybe not.
Look.
I don't know, like the 20th anniversary. I don't know.
The main reason we did it is I needed a drinking buddy.
Hey, you could have just said, "Hey, Marty, we're going to drink. So come on out.
Some bourbon.
Hang on out.
Thank you so
come
much.
Come to Tennessee anytime.
No, we appreciate this opportunity.
And the FLIOA Foundation.
And FLIOA.
It was.
We're going to get them on. We're going to get an update on the latest and greatest with what FLIOA is.
It was important that we have you here for all of us.
Well, we appreciate it. And I know our lead heads do too. And the opportunity to interview some of the other vendors that are here, like Daniel Defense and Tour Knives and Geisley and this other gentleman that you just introduced me to.
Listen, I've introduced you
to a lot of people
out there.
So we're gonna have a lot of new personalities for this segment of the Talking Lead podcast. So stay tuned. We've got more coming, and maybe we can get Tony to loosen up and tell us some more some gun running stories.
I'm always happy.
Days with the ATF.
You need to tell him the Will Clark story.
The Will Clark.
I'll give you. Okay, so I'll do the Will Clark, and I have like a funny kind of like Waco litigation story. I'll do the Waco.
Will Clark is not funny.
I'll do the Waco one first. So I'm doing the Waco litigation, and we're through all the investigations. We're doing litigation, and Senator Danforth comes in, and Congress wants to run its one last investigation. So we got to turn over every piece of evidence associated with the Branch Davidian and the Waco, tragedy and events. I mean, horror stuff we had to do. Like I had to listen to, the tapes of the agents that were on the roof that got killed and things like that. But they want every single piece of evidence, anything that was associated with Waco. So this agent calls me up. She says, "Hey, after the Branch Davidian burned to the ground, there were a bunch of dogs that were there, that were just running around. So I adopted one of the dogs. Do I have to turn the dog over?"
I mean, he may have eaten a piece of evidence.
Says, "No, you can keep Willie."
Willie.
So the Will Clark and Will Clark.
He just retired.
He was actually honored. I don't know what year it was, but it was the FLIOA conference meeting that we had down in South Beach, Miami. I'm sorry you missed
I
that,
missed
Marty.
that
Sorry
one.
you missed that. But he was honored for that one. And Will's an ATF agent, and I know him personally. And when he actually just retired, he reached out to me and just said, "Hey, I'm retiring. I just want to again thank you for everything you did for what happened to me." So what happened to him is he woke up one Sunday morning and he was going to the gym, and he's getting in his car, and his neighbor, his female, starts running towards him and says, "Will, help. My boyfriend's trying to kill me." So out comes boyfriend naked. So just a little color to the story.
Yeah.
With a
little twist.
a huge flashlight, and
A huge what?
Flashlight or
A huge
One of those
what?
big
He's
mad-
naked and he's got a huge what?
flashlight. Right.
Okay.
Certainly, you'll edit that
One of
out.
those big mag lights.
So, but he starts attacking him.
Yeah.
And Will has to, he gets his weapon out and he does lethal force,
Shoots him dead.
shoots and kills him. And they're in the Virgin Islands. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So territory, right? Not state.
Yeah.
And it's very political there versus the feds and the locals and things like that. So they started, they prosecuted him for murder 2.
Oh, wow.
And it was really touch and go whether DOJ was going to rep him or not. They ultimately did pay for it, but it was a tough case because they were trying to get it removed to federal court, and it was denied. And there was all kinds of crazy case law that said, "Look, the Constitution doesn't follow the flag," and different things like that. And I mean, ultimately, the case got dismissed on a bizarre sort of law school like evidentiary term, but that's a good example of how like off-duty things could happen.
Does this cover off-duty things?
So
as
I'm
well?
glad I told the story.
Yeah,
because,
there we go.
Before you
Because-
go there, though, I think it's important that people know that as a FLEOA member, FLEOA really stood behind him.
Yeah. No. That's why he got an award. I mean, FLEOA stood behind
John
him,
Adler, yeah.
and FLEOA stood behind, diplomatic security agent Chris Dede. Chris Dede was involved in an off-duty shooting in a McDonald's, and the government denied him representation.
Oh, wow.
He was actually with a different insurance provider that also denied him representation. Had to sue them actually to get some representation. So he's now a Feds member. And
There you go.
happy to tell his story with us. And again, FLEOA was very, very, very supportive
Yep.
of him. But we do have an off-duty. So the issue is whether your scope of employment. For my money, right? You're a federal agent. You flash your badge. Federal agent. You've stepped into scope. I don't care what the hell's going on.
Sure.
Right. That we want you to be armed 24/7 in certain agencies, and we want you to act in emergency situations, like that, to protect, yourself, your family, and the lives of others. But for the things that kind of slip through the cracks, we have this off-duty, what we call our LEOSA rider coverage for an additional $100 or additional $150.
Okay.
So this is LEOSA, which is big. FLEOA supported it, the legislation, and trying to get it, revised and things like that. It's a concealed carry legislation that allows all federal, state, and local active and retired federal law enforcement officers to carry their weapons concealed, notwithstanding state CCW laws.
Right.
So we cover anything associated with that. I mean, I once had a case where, and I like to give this example because I think a lot of us could see letting this person in your house, and you can see how bad things happen.
Sure.
So I had
This
I had
big
an ICE agent who was bringing a refrigerator or some appliance
Washer, yeah.
into his house, and he had to bring it up the stairs, and it was like he couldn't do it by himself. And his neighbor happened to be out front, who's a painter, with his day labor he had. And he says, "Hey, I'll pay you $20. You just help me get this thing up there."
Sure.
So he did. Left. The guy comes back like at night, 7:00 at night. So my agent goes for a walk with his wife, which is the only reason he had his gun on his ankle.
Yeah.
Goes for a walk with his wife and comes back, and the door rings.
That's just like that. I hear a door ringing somewhere. I don't know who's there.
Is it?
Somebody over there.
Does that mean I never have anything on?
I think it's that table over there.
Anyway, so
he's
wait, so the guy says this laborer comes back and he knocks on the door and he says, "Hey, I think I dropped my phone when I was bringing the washer in with you. Can I come in and look for it?" And my agent goes, "I'll go look. Stay here." He closes the door and locks it. And I'm thinking in my head, I would have just let him in.
Me too.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Most people would.
Yeah, come
Because
on
he just
in.
helped you earlier that day.
Right.
He went and he says, and he goes and he looks, no, dude, it's not there. And he's like, you sure? I have a job tomorrow. They're going to call that phone. I really need to work, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, call the number. Can I come in and call the number? So the guy's still trying to get in the house.
Still trying to get in the house.
And so he goes, all right, what's the number? He puts it in his phone. He goes and he calls it. And he comes back out and he's like, still nothing there. And then his guy's got a porch. So he's walking around the porch and looking like with a flashlight.
Uh-huh.
So my agent walks outside and thinks like, oh, maybe there's something. Maybe it's out here. Let me help him look. And that's when a guy pulls a knife on him, right? Has it right on him. It says, give me your wallet. All right. Give me your money in your wallet. So give me your money. Guy throws his wallet at him.
Sure.
He throws the wallet back. He says, I didn't say give you your wallet. I said, give me your money. So he takes the cash out, gives it to him. He says, no, give me your money card. Gives him the money card. He's like, what's your code? He gives him the code.
Yeah.
Right? And my guy says, look, if that would have been it, that would have been it. I would have let him go. It's just money. It's just a money card, whatever. But then the guy says, we're going to go inside. His wife's pregnant. I left that out. He says, we're going to go inside and everything's going to be okay. And so now my guy is thinking, oh, I go inside. It's not going to be okay.
Yeah.
So he had some pellets there or something, and his front, and he had his foot up, and he had his phone, and he was just leaning down, and the bad guy goes, "What are you doing? You trying to make a call?" And he showed him his phone. He's like, "I'm not calling anybody." And he said, "I watched his eyes look at my phone, and that gave me the split second I needed to get my gun out and shoot him." He got him right in the throat. He said, "Man, I've never seen so much blood."
Oh yeah,
he
hit
says
that artery,
down.
man. Yeah, squirt.
He went down. You know, now the
Now, you
agency did not scope him, and we would have had a tough time probably doing that as well.
Yeah.
Because it was not like an operational thing. So if he would have had the LEOSA coverage, he'd have been fully covered. Ultimately, the state and locals cleared him immediately.
Yeah.
And there really was no family to sue.
Yeah.
So, but that's an example of just how stuff happens.
Just how sideways something can go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Additional coverage.
Yeah, and when we offer it for retirees too.
Off-duty, on-duty.
We offer for retirees. We're covering right now a retired DEA agent in South Florida that was in a bad bar incident where he had to pull his gun and shoot and he killed somebody that was attacking him.
Yeah.
So that is the one area we cover retirees with a LEOSA as well.
Very
So
cool. Good thing
we
you
almost
told
ended
that
the
story.
show and then we got back on
Yeah,
this.
we were like, hey, we didn't talk about this. So
Yeah, absolutely.
but definitely much needed. So for my federal employees that are listening, get in touch with Tony and Brenda. One more time, how they get in touch with you.
FedsProtection.com, or they can call us at 866-955-FEDS.
And are you guys on the social medias?
Oh, yeah.
So Leadheads, go there, show them the love, follow, like, let them know you heard
Love
them
it.
here on the Talking Lead podcast.
We very
And
much appreciate
I'm
it.
sure we'll have more from you guys. We're going to be here another couple of days.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
as the stories come to mind, let me know. And
Oh, I got a lot.
I love hearing stories, man. These
Yeah.
are great stories. So
He's been around a long time.
more coming from the 2021 FLEOA National Conference here in, where are we, Warwick, Rhode Island?
Yeah.
Or Providence?
I think we're in Providence.
I would just say Providence.
Okay. Well, you just did, so
yeah,
there you go.
Providence, I think. All right. Thank you very much, Marty.
All right, Leadheads, we are back. We are at the 2021 FLEOA National Convention here in, was it Warwick?
Warwick, Rhode Island.
There you go. Warwick. River Ricky, right.
Starting already.
I can't say it fast. Try saying that fast 2 times.
Warwick, right?
There you go.
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island. We're in Rhode Island. I'll just say Rhode Island because I can say that. And we're having a great time talking to some wonderful people, getting some awesome stories. My next guest, he's new to the show, but the company has been on the show before, and I've tried several of their products and have been thoroughly impressed with them. And we've got John Rizosa. Rivosa, not Travolta, not to be confused with John Travolta, joining us now with First Tactical. Welcome in.
How you doing?
Doing well, man.
Good.
Doing really good. So, look, we're just going to go ahead and address the elephant that's in the room. So, you were telling me you're a firefighter, right?
Yeah, I'm a retired battalion chief, actually.
Yeah, retired battalion chief firefighter. And during his service, he had an accident. So tell us about the accident that happened. Yeah.
Oh.
We're gonna go ahead and address it so people know.
You got to pull me on this one, right?
Yeah.
So before I was promoted, I was assigned to a truck company one night. We had a fire at it was actually a crack house. So I was up on the roof trying to cut a hole in it, and got down. Had all my protective gear on and didn't have my mask on, but didn't feel I needed it at the time. And I'm cutting through the roof, and unbeknownst to me, under the roof was a steel plate. Saw kicked up the handlebar, so it broke the inside of my front tooth.
Knocked his front tooth.
25 years ago. Actually didn't knock it out. It just cracked the inside.
Cracked it.
I go to the dentist twice a year, cleanings, etc. And they're like, hey, John, your tooth's alive. It's cracked on the inside and everything. It's all good. Till last week, I'm eating a thick pork sandwich. I take a bite in pork sandwich. For some reason, I pulled out and felt like a branch snapping in my mouth. So
oh, man.
that was a $4,800 pork sandwich. That's all I can say. So
there you go. So
got an implant coming.
So he thinks he has a lisp, but there's no lisp here. So, but he's very self-conscious about it. But we appreciate you taking the time to be on and update us on what's going on with First Tactical. So talk about the latest and greatest that's going on with you guys.
Well, First Tactical, I'll tell you a little about, if you know about First Tactical. We were
for our new listeners. Let's hear it. Yeah.
Our founder, Dan Costa, was the founder of 511 Tactical. Brought it up to the huge company that it is, and so decided to go in a different direction and sold out. And after a few years, decided he wanted to get back in the business, and got a few key people that started First Tactical with him. Started our company, and we hooked up with some really nice suppliers, thread and fabric suppliers like DuPont Chemical and whatnot. And we've got some really great fabrics that they breathe, they stretch, and they're double dyed, so they resist fade. So we got a really.
I dig them. I got a couple of your battle shirts I was telling you about. Yep. Tried them out for. I guess it's been at least 2 years. I've been wearing. I'll take them out hunting. I'll take them out when I'm doing range days and stuff like that. They're very comfortable. And then your boots. I've tried your boots.
Great boots.
Like the boots.
All our boots are on our running shoe platform, like the boot I have on right now.
They're
our vice president and chief designer, Corey Nicolak, was the chief designer for 511 also. And in the past, he's worked with Columbia and Nike designing. But he's our chief designer and vice president, and he's really attention to detail. And again, we've got some great suppliers. All our hardware, like Prim Snaps, YKK zippers, are top of the line supply hardware. And our fabrics are, like I say, two-way mechanical stretch, micro ripstop, and Teflon coated. And we attacked a couple of our items from our other company and another company, and we exceed them. And ironically, at less money, quite considerably less.
Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit earlier. Your competitors that are out there, their products are at least twice as much as yours, but you guys are still coming in with the quality and the comfort at half the price of
our Defender line. That would be a fair statement. They're $100 more per pair of pant, but our everyday, our V2 tactical pant that we went after, like a 511 strike pant. Mm-hmm. A strike pant's a nice pant, but it's a $75 pant. Our pant is a $50 pant, and it's, again, not to sound redundant, but it's the latest and greatest in thread technology, and it does change over years.
I haven't tried your pants yet, but Tia has, and like I said, she really liked them, and I really liked them on her. They look
that's
fantastic.
That's the thing I was saying.
The women's line.
We have a true women's line. I mean, we have great female design engineers, and we were going to go look for, hopefully company-wide, to get like a 12% female saturation. And to date, we're at like 38%.
Nice.
Female. Our pants it's a premium pant. Like our V2 is a premium pant. It fits great. It looks great. It resists fade. It's just and for $50, it's a great value.
Absolutely, yeah. We were also talking a little bit. You guys, you're also in. It's not luggage, but you're in like the bag market as well. And I got one of your travel bags.
Rolling duffels.
The rolling duffels, and I've been using it for about 2 years now too, and it's really held up. Not had any issues with it.
Yeah,
the zippers are still
bag.
zipping just fine. And
that bag was designed for
It's been
Like
through TSA and
Yep.
airports, all that stuff, and it's survived all that for the last 2 years.
Good. I mean, I use that for a demo bag, but that bag's basically for an operator to grab all his equipment and get deployed, or a wildland firefighter that's got to go for a while, puts his gear in there and whatnot. And we also have some great backpacks and bags that, just, depending on, they go half day up to 3.5 day or 3 day.
Yeah.
And they have bags that, go inside them. Like
You got
like
accessory bags and things
accessory-
like that
Yep.
that go with them too. Yeah, so you've
Assist-
got a
like a
really nice
system.
line of bags and
Yeah, we
cases. I don't know. I just call that a big travel cases because I travel with it.
Right.
The roller bag,
the rolling
the
duffel,
roller
the
duffel.
rolling-
Yeah, I dig it. So, what else you guys got coming out? What's new with First Tactical?
We're real happy. We just came out with a patrol duty shirt and pant
Okay.
for the patrol market, patrol divisions within law enforcement.
Yeah.
And we're also real happy that we're in. And I'm a retired fire chief, so I'm on the fire side too. We were approached by FDNY, looked at they had a spec for a particular pant they want, 100% cotton pant. We did that. They were
Yeah.
real happy with that. We also sell them their first ever department issued T-shirt, which was usually done station by station, but this one's a department that came out nice with this new Alpha Lux reflective embellishment on
So
the
it's like a T-shirt, or is it like a polo shirt?
It's a T-shirt. It's a T-shirt with a reflective on each shoulder, a flag on one shoulder, their FDNY patch type
nice.
on the other, and they really love it.
Is it like
And
that moisture whisking material
It's
type
it's
stuff?
it's what we call our soft, tough cotton. But it's a real soft T-shirt, but we call it a tough cotton.
Yeah.
And it's again, it resists fade. It feels good on you. It's a soft shirt, and we also do their cotton polos for their troops, and
Yeah. So
their pants and their outerwear. We do their our tactics system jackets and parkas. for
So
them, too.
our department lead heads out there, military, law enforcement, fire department, first responders, get in touch with First Tactical here, and they could probably do something cool like that for your department too.
Yeah, go to firsttactical.com, and you'll see some familiar things in there. But again, they've been all re-engineered, and got some great suppliers towards them. And we've been really fortunate that we've been doubling in sales for the last 4 years in a row. We're 7, and we just turned 7 on 4th of July.
Oh well, happy birthday!
So,
The 4th of July.
So,
what a great birthday, right?
Our growth now is just phenomenal, and people are real happy. And again, the value is it's
And are you
highest
guys
quality
in?
at a
Are you in
great
retail
value.
stores? Can they find you in retail stores?
We have dealers. We have dealers throughout the country, and
They go to your website and
you
find those.
you can find those per region, and
And what is that website?
It's www.firsttactical.com. FIRSTTACTICAL.
There you go. And you guys are on the social medias also. You're
Yep,
on Instagram and
yep.
Facebooks and
We're on Facebook and all
All
that
that
above. We have our own social media division
oh, okay,
to take care of all that.
very nice. Do they want to take care of mine too? We can work something out,
I like it.
Yeah. So guys, go check out First Tactical. John, I appreciate you taking the time to be on and getting us updated. And again, I've got some firsthand experience with your products, and I can attest to the ones that I've tried out. I really like them. You lead heads will not be disappointed.
Yeah, check it out, firsttactical.com, and look at our Defender if you're into that high-end SWAT stuff. That's a great line there, Defender and V2, and I appreciate the time.
All right, guys, we'll be back with more from the 2021 FLIOA National Conference here in, I'm going to say Rhode Island, but it's
Rhode Island,
Warwick.
Rhode Island.
There we go.
The Crown Plaza.
Crown Plaza. We're high dollar anymore, aren't we?
Yeah, we're highfalutin. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, lead heads, we are back at the 2021. I think I've been calling it the 2001 or 2001. I've been jacking it up. It's 2021 FLIOA National Conference here in Rhode Island, brought to you by Feds Protection and in part by FLIOA themselves. So lead heads, go and thank them for making all these awesome interviews, all this legication that you're getting in this episode. Joining us now is Carl Lorio. He's with Bush Protective, and these guys are really doing some awesome things for our law enforcement men and women, really adding a level of protection that has been overlooked for several years as far as the standards into how they test it. And I'm going to let Carl introduce himself, Bush Protective, and then we're going to talk about that.
So hello everyone. Carl Lorio from Bush Protective. Kind of give you a little background. Bush, the company, has been doing helmets for over 40 years out of Germany. About 6 years ago, they kind of introduced themselves to the U.S. market with something that was state of the art compared to what we see here.
Yeah.
And I've been selling helmets for 25 years and didn't know that the standard that we currently use is from 1981.
It's a little antiquated, right?
It's a little old. I don't know there's anything in this building that was tested from 1981. So we started looking at the differences between the European standard and the U.S. standard.
Yeah.
And they were dramatically ahead of us. So obviously they came over here, started testing in U.S. labs. Mm-hmm. We verified what they were actually saying and realized the product was significantly different than what we were currently selling.
Yeah.
As we started comparing apples to apples, there was no comparison.
Yeah. And you guys have videos out there too. So as he's talking about this, you guys got a YouTube channel?
We do have a YouTube channel at
so
Bush.
Give that so they can, as we're talking about this, they can go look at that video.
You just look up Bush Protective,
Yep.
and you can actually see a video, a slow motion video of a current NIJ helmet, which is the current standard from 1981, and then our Bush comparison, and then a polyethylene-based helmet, which is a lightweight helmet.
Right.
So basically the helmets that are designed in the U.S. LE market right now are military helmets. Now, the transition over, you would think, is, okay, they're the same thing. Mm-hmm. But realistically, a military helmet was designed for fragmentation. LE officers don't have that threat. Their threats are more handgun calibers.
Right.
So when you look at the standard, it's just a pass or fail, meaning that you shoot the bullet, the helmet stops, we're good. The only difference is you have this brain housing group inside the helmet, and that test doesn't
address the penetrate. It doesn't necessarily penetrate, but it's still, the bullet goes in and.
That's correct.
It may not be penetrating the material, but it is still penetrating.
The bullet is stopped by the material.
It's stopped by the material.
But it goes 4 inches into the cavity of the helmet.
Right.
That's a bad thing.
Which the head is there.
Correct. So the FBI and DEA actually realized this and started their own standard. So from 2017 through 2019, they came up with the most comprehensive test in the U.S. to kind of replace or in addition to that NIJ standard. The Bush helmet is the only helmet that meets that standard. Now, what makes it different is we talked about the other helmet was a pass or fail.
Right.
What they do now is they will raise the temperature of the helmet to 140 degrees, mm-hmm. which simulates being in top of being in the trunk of a car. So that 140 degrees is going to give you a different ballistic result. All right. So
because it's affecting the material, it's expanding the material. So
correct. And aramid will have a different polyethylene type material in heat. So that was one thing. They do extreme temperatures also of minus 40 degrees. They do wet and dry condition testing. Another big change, they shoot 44 shots at the at different helmets. Okay. So you have a bigger sampling. They do angle shots. They do closed edge testing. The current test is 2 inches from the edge. And if you think about a helmet and you remove 2 inches around the entire helmet, now you have a tactical yarmulke. You don't have a lot of surface area to protect the officer.
Right.
The DEA profile actually is 1 inch from the edge. So you get closer to the edge, which is more realistic, especially if you're going into the fight.
Right.
They also test the bolt and the hardware. One of the big differences is your weak point is you're drawing a hole in the helmet for your harnesses or your rails.
Right.
So you have to have a bolt that can stop the bullet. But let's say the bolt stops the bullet, the secondary fragmentation from that bolt itself or the round squeezing through is a problem too. So in the FBI protocol, they do not have any, you cannot have any penetrations with any of the hardware, the bolt or the harness. And then they also do blunt impact testing and also shell compression testing just from the actual pressure on it.
Gotcha.
So all that, in a nutshell, has created a different environment for the helmets.
I got a question.
Sure.
So on the pressure tests, what are they using to pressure test?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember what the pressures were, but they were taking basically a device and they're compressing it in. You're right. So if it got
if they got run over or
correct.
something,
Yep.
yeah. So you could take the force of a whatever
storage, whatever.
However many tons of force on it.
Correct.
So it's got to pass X amount.
Just like the harness, they're stretching and pulling it so that if a guy is hung up or whatever, when's it going to release or when's it going to rip his head off?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So
the video again, you guys go to their YouTube channel, Bush Protective, and they've got videos of these ballistic tests that they were doing, and it's amazing what they were passing in the past as being protective, because you look at that and you see the bullet go through the initial material and then to the inside, and no, it's not penetrating the material, but again, it's flexing about 4 inches on the inside of the helmet, which is gonna, it's gonna damage, kill whoever's wearing that helmet. But you look at the test that they're doing now versus that, and as far as it goes, there's nothing coming on the inside. There's no flex on the inside once that round hits, and you're doing different calibers on this too. You were talking about. He's got a helmet right here, and we did a live video. You guys go to our Instagram, and we did some pictures of this. And you saw that this was shot 40-something times?
This shot was shot 32 times
32
down in
times.
Virginia. We did a field test.
I see a 380 here.
Well, actually, that's just the thickness of the helmet.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay.
This is the G2 round, which is the federal FBI round.
Okay.
These are all 9 millimeters.
9
This is
mils.
also a 124 grain NATO. And then on this quadrant, we shot some critical duty, Hornacre critical duty. So we kind of did a little different things. We also did a bolt shot here and an edge shot. So
and when he says the bolt for our listening audience, that's where they're going to put their accessory rails. So they put the rails on these bolts, and then they can attach their lights, their nods, their whatever they're using, accessories, shields, face shields, all that.
And then on the product itself, so we have all the different cuts, whether it be high cut, full cut, mid cut, and it depends on the environment that they're using, whether it be tactical or patrol helmet. We can cover down on all those. We also, as you said, the rail system. One thing's unique about our rail system is you can add visors, whether it be a riot visor in the situation within the last year, or if you want to need a ballistic visor, it's already integrated into the helmet.
Okay.
So you don't have to get a different, and then the visors, we have everything from
Keep
riot.
the same rail system on there, then you can just change out the different visors.
We have everything from riot to frag to ballistic visors.
Got your comms on there.
We don't build the comms, obviously, but we make the rail adapters. So no matter what comms you're using, we have the adapter to apply.
Now there's a
to our
comms
rails.
company here. Have you guys y'all talked a little bit?
So Invisio's here,
Yep.
and it's a very unique relationship. They're coming into the U.S. market, so we're kind of the same, traveling the same path here,
Right.
trying to bring some new product, a little bit more expensive, into the market.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more training and education of what
Yeah.
makes them different. And yes,
but
so
quality,
absolutely.
With that expense comes quality, and you're getting what's the versatility? The versatility.
One other thing that makes us very unique is from a procurement standpoint is we are one size fits all.
Right.
We have a wheel dial system on the back of our helmet that will allow every individual from the smallest female to the largest guy out there to fit in one helmet. So that makes it easier for inventory, and you're not having small, medium, and large. That small, medium, and large, extra large sizing came from the NATO, from the military side of the background. Remember what we're trying to do here is we're trying to make a law enforcement helmet, something that works for close quarters combat, not fragmentation. That's what sets us apart.
Gotcha.
So this is designed for officers. And that's all we do. We don't do military helmets or anything else in the U.S. A couple other features, you can have MVG mounts. You can add those to the rails. And then you also have your Velcro kits, your covers. We can do a dip if you like.
They can hydro dip, lead heads. They can hydro dip.
We can
My
hydro dip
favorite.
if that's your favorite.
Hey, if you want to send them to me, I'll hydro dip them for you.
Hey, we're all about that.
I'm pretty good at it these days. You used to ask the lead heads.
So that's kind of us in a nutshell. Is we're trying to educate the community out there on what the new standard is.
Yeah.
And try and get the
difference between the military standards and then what you're bringing to the law enforcement community.
And we get it. Military is all about lightweight, Fragmentation, you're going to be wearing that thing for 18, 20 hours a day.
Yeah.
LE, most operations are, they're only wearing it from an hour to or less. They have a set,
like you
set
said,
time.
where do most of them keep their helmets is in the trunk.
Correct. Right.
Yeah, it's in the trunk. It's like their their rifles typically. They're
Exactly.
in the trunk till they need it, till the shit hits the fan,
Exactly.
so to speak. Well, very cool, man. So, what's your background?
So my backgrounds, I've been doing law enforcement sales and ballistics and body armor for 20 plus years. And then I just retired from the Marine Corps and Marine Corps Reserves after 30 years.
Oh, thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
What, you Sergeant Major?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I can tell. Definitely can tell. So, talk about your time in the service.
So deployed twice out of, I can back up from there. So I started out as an armor and then ended up doing MSG duty. I got to travel the world doing Bolivia and Israel. Ended up transferring reserves while I went through college and ended up in the law enforcement gig. So never went back to active duty, stayed in reserves. Was lucky enough to get with a battalion out of New York. And after 9/11, kind of was the epicenter. So we were the first ones deployed after that.
Right.
And got into Iraq in 2003, back in 2009, and then finally promoted myself out of deploying, basically.
Very cool. So, you got any of your time in the military? What's something that just really stands out? Something that you look back on and you're just like really proud of?
Just lucky enough to bring everyone home. Everyone on my guys, my platoon, all came home.
Yeah.
So that's
Amen to that.
yeah, not injured, and we got home safely.
There you go. So, again, we thank you for your service.
You're
and
welcome.
We appreciate what Bush Protective is doing for our law enforcement men and women, adding this extra protection that they didn't know they needed, or didn't know they weren't getting.
I felt ignorant when I found out.
Yeah.
You just assume, you're told that it does something, and then when you find out, and obviously the high-speed photography is actually where it breaks it down.
Yeah.
You can actually see what's happening at different events.
Yeah. Well, it's like you were saying, you'd seen the test many times, but you'd never seen it with a high-speed cam like that.
Correct.
To slow it down, to see, that.
And you can actually see in the video that I showed you the shock wave coming through. You can see the energy transfer.
Wow.
And that's something that we're not, used to seeing in the TBI, that what's going to happen to that officer or individual if we don't account for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, stop the bullet, but if you can't color in between the lines anymore, it doesn't help you very much.
That's right. Absolutely. So, guys, check them out, bushprotective.com.
Yes.
Is that the right? And are you guys on social medias at all?
We are. I'm not a social media guy, but I'm sure we're on all
Okay.
that stuff,
right.
Instagram or whatever. But
I'll find it, and I'll put show links in the show notes.
That'd be awesome.
So you lead heads can go to our website and check that out.
yeah,
Carl?
I'll have to get hooked up the link.
Okay, Carl, thank you so much. We appreciate you being on.
Hey, thanks for what you're doing.
And when you guys get some new materials out that we need to inform our community about, you're more than welcome to come on.
Absolutely.
Talk about it.
Hey, appreciate it.
All right, guys, we'll be back with more from the 2021 FLIOA National Conference here in Warwick, Rhode Island, brought to you by Feds Protection.
Fantastic.
So
That
there
was
you
fun.
there you guys have it. We learned a little more about what Feds does, the Federal Employee Defense Services, with Tony and Brenda there, and then you got to hear some latest and greatest from some of the NICE and firearm companies that were there in support of FLIOA. Always a great turnout for that event for the vendor side of things too. And I know that we're going to have Larry and John and possibly Bill on an upcoming episode, and they're going to talk about all that and some other FLIOA, Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, things that they covered during the conference, the 2021 conference. Tony, tell everybody again, give your contact information where our listeners, our federal law enforcement men and women, and it's employees too. So, you stress that in the interview. It's not just for law enforcement. It's for any federal employee, this service that Feds offers, and I think it's amazing.
Sure. First, let me just thank you, Marty, for having us on your podcast. Obviously, thank you to FLIOA for giving us the platform to talk about what we provide. They're such an important organization. Not just to us, but for the entire federal law enforcement community. Whether you're a member or not, that they provide such important advocacy to everything that you all do as law enforcement officers. For more information about us at Feds Protection, just go to the website, fedsprotection.com, FEDS protection.com. You can give us a call at 866-955-FEDS. That's 866-955-3337. You can certainly ask for me. I'd be happy to talk to you, reference this podcast, and be happy to, give you any information you might need.
There you go. And Dr. Kanakogi, you're probably the most distinguished guest that we've ever had on this podcast, next to Tony, that is.
I'm giving my ego today off.
All your accomplishments and everything that you've done and that you are doing and continue to do for our law enforcement men and women in the fight for the mental health. We greatly appreciate that, and I really would sincerely like to have you back on, and let's talk about your judo and your books, and you were on Good Morning America. We didn't even talk about that, so there's still lots and lots for us to talk about.
Thank you. The funny part about it is we filmed Good Morning America on a Wednesday, so I had all of that studio makeup that took 3 days to get off. But it aired on a Thursday. On that same Thursday, I was actually making entry on a search warrant. So I was, of course, getting teased because I wore a ton of makeup to a search warrant. So it was kind of funny.
So I dressed for the part, right? So Leadheads, we've got more coming up in our next episode of the coverage of the FLEOA 2021 National Conference there in Rhode Island, presented by Feds and FLEOA. They made it possible for us to be there again this year, and we greatly appreciate that. So make sure you tune in and shoot me some emails if there's a certain guests, certain topics that you want us to cover. TalkingLead@gmail.com. We'll make sure we make that happen. But until then, as always, keep your loved ones close and your firearms closer.